Welcome to the Starting Over Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos. In this show, where we look at the strategies, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of heroclix. Today, we are going to be talking briefly about the meta, and then we're going to go into the Blackbird. Because the Blackbird pretty much is probably going to be the majority of the show for today. I've been sitting back, looking, percolating, brewing, taking in the details and all the coolness, thinking about, where the game's going, especially for U.S. nationals. And I was challenged by my teammates to actually look at the entirety of the meta and ask ourselves a solid question. Is Unimind the most dominant or the only dominant mechanic? And as of right now, I will say I don't know. Which I will automatically put into perspective is progress from, I would say, is like, hey, Unimind is pretty much the only dominant element in the game right now. And so because of that, it's making me sort of try to refocus about where I'm trying to refocus about what the real state of the game is. And the main reason that I'm saying that is when we look really hard at the set and we look at what Thanos does and Star Fox does for Unimind, we can't sort of help but just either be pissed off or enter into despair, so to speak, just because of how strong those game elements are. Okay, and so I am definitely, I would say personally, like a little ticked, because I would think that, hey, maybe we want to balance some things out from game design perspective. That's my thought process, and I understand that is not always the case. But if we start to actually go in and ask ourselves some real questions, how much major diversity are we seeing? And even to take a sort of step back is, with the diversity that we are seeing, are people realistically trying stuff, or are people holding their hands for US Nats? And as of right now, I am of the opinion that I think people are holding their hand for US Nats. And the implication of that means US Nats will be a huge surprise for people. I believe it's definitely going to be a situation where I think some of the people have an incentive to bring unique stuff out, and then if you haven't already sort of solved in how you're going to deal with Unimind, then you shouldn't have brought it out in the first place. Which leads me to sort of the thought of, if everybody's planning to deal with Unimind, is it a wise idea to play Unimind? And again, the answer in my mind is, I don't know. Like, I'm not definitive at this standpoint on which is right and which is wrong. And I think that, for me, is a good thing. I think the frustration comes in is at the local level, you're sort of stuck waiting with bated breath until Nats, and seeing like what the side trick is. And until you find that out, a lot of players are going to be like, well, in the meantime, I'm going to have some sealeds, and I get to avoid the big problems with Unimind, and then I can, I'll eventually have to face him. But until I have to face him, I won't face him. And that's what I think the real issue comes in. So I would say, like, we have some time to figure some things out. But at the other end, I would argue that for us as a community, I think that most of us are waiting to see what the high level players are going to bring out, and why are they bringing out what they're bringing out, and I think that's the better way of putting it. We're waiting to see what the higher level players bring out and why they're bringing out those characters. Now, with everything in the new set, I do believe there is a golden rule, for me at least, that needs to be addressed, and it was brought up in a heroclix subgroup that I'm in, and it pretty much goes like this. When you have a 10-point figure with a very good dominant keyword, at what point do you not just spam that figure? So that you're guaranteed to get map, you're guaranteed to, run your offense, and your opponent really can't do anything about it. And when you take it the next step further, and you ask yourself a solid question, which is, hey, my opponent is more than likely running X, and because they're running X, that means that I can easily just do Y. And if I can easily just do Y, then no matter what, my opponent can't get past it or get over that advantage, disadvantage, whatever. And so I bring that up, and mainly in context to the whole thing with the Avengers and with Giant Girl and the Giant Fast Forces Giant Girl. And the fact that at 10 points in their spammable Colossal Retaliation, it's going to cause a ridiculous amount of problems for players in the game. And I think, unfortunately, when push comes to shove, that Giant Girl from the Fast Forces is definitely going to get watch listed. It's definitely going to get watch listed. It does too much for too small of a point cost for it not to get watch listed. And I think that's going to piss a lot of people off, because one of the main rules of Colossal Retaliation is look, you only get one of them. And then you create a character that allows you to get more than one out. There's going to be consequences. And so I feel that overall that the community is going to be in a huge uproar / disadvantage because of the cost of the Giant Girls, of how many Giant Girls are going to be on a team. If you start saying, I have 2 Giant Girls from the standard set and 2 Fast Forces Giant Girls, you are automatically you're at +4 Avengers theme team for 40 points. And you just add whoever else. And let's just say you only add in one other character, and then you add in ID cards and whatever else. That one character that you're picking is super stout because it's more than likely 200 and plus points. And then you add in some ID cards and, a piece of equipment, and bam, you have to deal with, this super stout piece and the backup singers. And so the thought process comes in is that with that many Colossal Retaliators, even if you called in a a Professor X ID card, and he was able to hit all 3 characters. And I'm talking about Professor X Prime through the ID card. Psychic Blast hit all 3 Colossals and make the cocoon egg thing and all that other stuff. And you just go off from there. Even if you were able to do that, you still have a Colossal Retaliator left. And you can just go in and do what you need to do. And I would also argue is your opponent didn't hit your main force guy. So you just sacrificed 3 pawns to keep your main force guy functionally untouched. And your opponent tokened a character to take out some of your pawns. And so if you look at it from a chess perspective, sacrificing a couple of pawns to take out a knight is worth it. And I think that's the part that a lot of players may be underestimating right now with pretty much everything that's going on with the giant girls. And this is my opinion on this more directly versus like research. If we see a significant amount of the field is Avengers giant girl teams, and the breakdown will go like something like this: Shredders 10%, Unimind 25 to 35%. So that puts us to about half of our field. Let's just say 35% instead of not creating any confusion. So we have 45% spent. If we see another 35%, and it's just Avengers, then we might have a problem. Like Houston, we actually might have a problem because now we are looking at like legitimate threats. And someone could say in the back of in the back, like, hey man, what about Cap, Iron Man, Wasp, Hawkeye, what about Vision? Like you can yell out like 80 different Avengers, Black Panther, and you could make something that's viable and threatening to this type of team. And I think the frustration, at least for me, is that most people will be like, well, I got 2 giant girls and I bought 2 fast forces, so that's what Dark Logo said all I needed. And then I got out theme team because a guy brought in 10 giant girls. I'm like, well, yeah, that can happen. It's the fact that it can happen is what's scary to me. And for anybody that's listened for a long time, and you go all the way back to when I was talking about, it's not, I think it's Web of Spider-Man. I think it's Web of Spider-Man when we had the Researcher. The Researcher was by far one of the biggest mistakes that WizKids made at the time. Because, Web of Spider-Man, Researcher. Because he was a 15-point figure that gave enhancement. Says when a friendly character with a scientist keyword and a higher point value is within 8 squares, Researcher can use enhancement, but only to affect characters with a scientist keyword, which completely negates the anyway, it's stupid wording, but it's easy when you have a character who is 15 points, black scientist researcher. He's on his way to be a PhD. He's learning the ways of science from Tony Stark and Mr. Fantastic. And he's like, hey, Mr. Stark, I'll power up your repulsor blast there, buddy. We'll work on that. We'll make it so you can fire out 20 times more powerful blast, and then give like a nice cooling fan on your hands, so it feels like a nice 63 degrees outside on your hands the entire time, while it's like molten plasma coming out of your blasters. Okay, so this character was stupid for the longest time because you would combine researchers with an Iron Man, but in particular, you would combine researchers with Professor X, who also had the scientist keyword. And it's not just any Professor X, it's I see through you, Professor X. And he could liquidate teams like that back in the day. He would outwit and then just psychic blast you. It's like, oh, you got chip change? Getting rid of that. Oh, you got impervious? Sorry about that, buddy. Psychic blast. Mental blast. And he would be blasting fools for like 4 to 5 damage, depending on, the build. And so it was easy with a researcher to play 3 of them, cap out your range damage for a character, and only invest 45 points. With Giant Girl, you're only investing 10, and you're coming in 15 points less. And there's nothing stopping you from playing multiple researchers in the past. You could play more than 3. I think in a few of my builds, I had up to 5. But I knew their place. Okay, they were tie-up / enhancers. They did nothing else. Okay, with these Giant Girls, they give you plus to map, they become meat shields, and they can taxi. When you start looking at all of that value for such a low amount of point cost, we have a huge problem. And that huge problem means that Avengers themed teams, no matter what you do, whether you're running the new Chase Quasar, or you're going back and you're running Cosmic Spider-Man or something, you have to deal with the reality that these Giant Girls clog lanes, make it hard to approach, make it hard to get lines of fire, and makes a range game really, really bad. And it really hinders anyone trying to capitalize on a range game. Even more so, they can just say, like, all right, you're this type of team. I have plans for that type of teams on this type of map. I have plans for this other type of teams on this other type of map. You have a Professor X ID and a Unimine. Okay, cool. I am going to go into this formation. And still, the other important thing is there's nothing stopping you from playing Giant Man. Yeah, there's nothing stopping you from playing Giant Man. There's nothing stopping you from playing Miss Marvel. And you can play those Colossal Retaliators as well, on top of everything else. Because, believe it or not, Giant Man does have his uses. Okay? So, where does that leave us? Okay? Where does that leave us? Well, in all honesty, the Fast Forces... I'm glad I found out what the Fast Forces did really early, and I was able to reserve 2 of them. I know some people aren't going to be that lucky, okay? But if you can get some, get some. Alright, get at least 2. And the main reason I would say get at least 2 is with being able to Colossal Retaliate as a free action, even if other Colossal retaliations have happened, you can functionally just spam them like a missile silo and be like, Groot, attack. Alright, boom, you attacked. Alright, great. Power action, Giant Girl, attack. Boom, she attacks. Alright, great. Alright. Oh, okay, so you're on toughness. Alright, now, free action. Giant Girl, Fast Forces, number 1 attack. Boom. Giant Girl, Fast Forces, number 2 attacks. Boom. Alright. It's dead. Good to know if we launch enough giant people to stomp them in the face. I was about to say so. I was about to have a Boondocks reference there. That all of a sudden, if we have enough, foot stomping, we can beat any figure into submission. Now again, I know a lot of people say, "Hey, man, there's ID cards. And people will still use ID cards to take out the giant girls. They're not invincible. And I get it. Like I said, the Professor X ID is strong with the Force. But I also want to come back and be like, yo, there's some tricks out here in these streets. There's some tricks to be played out in these streets. And not the prostitution kind. Just letting you know. Not the prostitution kind. We keep it PG-ish on Starting Over Podcast. So, yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and get into Blackbird, and I got to bring up my phone, the phone of intermittent power. Literally, the battery, it gets down to 40% and it turns the phone off. So, yeah, I don't know what's up with that. So, if you're able to find the picture online or in your Facebook group, first things first, everybody will ask, does it look like the Quinjet? Does it look like the Quinjet? Did they just repurpose the Quinjet, buddy? And the answer is no, they didn't just repurpose the Quinjet sculpt. They actually spent some of that good old graphics design money and made a new sculpt. So congratulations, WizKids. Thank you for making a new sculpt for us. I appreciate it. All right, now let's I'm going to do some key things first. First, we're going to go over the resource, and then we're going to actually look at the dial itself. Okay, so for the resource, it says the resource is 5 points. You have force construction. This resource costs 5 points. Blackbird may be played without paying this cost, but if you do, this dial is not used. The resource must be assigned to the Blackbird. So we already do that. Alright, so clicking dial, when you remove an ID card from the game, using it to call in help ability, using its call in help ability, you may roll a d6 and turn the resource dial that many times. When Blackbird clears an action token or takes damage from an opposing character's attack, after resolutions, you may turn this resource dial once clockwise. Alright, now, there's that. So let's go with what the Quinjet says. So the Quinjet pretty much says pretty much the same thing. When the Quinjet clears actions, tokens, or takes damage from opposing character's attack after actions resolve, you may turn this resource dial once. So they and also the whole use the call in help ability. All right, so pretty much they copied and pasted clicking the dial. All right, like word for word, copy paste. All right, the scoring context is the same as the Quinjet. All right. Then it goes on to say, I have some time for some help. And it pretty much works the same way as the Quinjet, except it's in the modern language where it just says power. Choose an ID character on your sideline of equal or less points than the resource dial indicates. Place that ID character on the map adjacent to the Blackbird. Remove that ID card from the game. Then roll a d6. Rolling this, turning its dial to the click number matching the result. Add 1 add 1 to the result if it is a student ID. Now this is important. You won't get this on the Blackbird. That character is no longer an ID character, can't use willpower, and is returned to the sideline if it would take damage. Now, some of you are saying, but Dark Logos, man, this seems pretty good. This seems almost broken. And I would say the part that student IDs get a bonus, yeah, that's a little cray-cray. But I will also indicate the problem is not the student IDs that were out. The problem is the student IDs that are coming with the Blackbird. But we're not going to get to that quite yet, because that's just like, never mind. I can't think of a good analogy right now. All right. So that's our resource dial. Now let's go ahead and take our deep breath. All right, and we're going to go and actually look at the Blackbird itself. Now, the Blackbird itself comes in at 120 points, 100 points, and 55 points versus the Quinjet, which came in at 140 points and 70 points. Now, I know some of you were probably thinking in the back of your mind, hey, Dark Logos, is what's the real major difference between the Quinjet as a dial and the Blackbird as a dial? And then I'll come back and say, I'm glad you asked, proverbial person represented through my non-changing voice. Let's go and break this down a little bit. First off, you can see that the Blackbird is pretty much a stealth jet, whereas the Quinjet is a fighter jet. Pure and simple. Pure and simple. You have, what's called actual base stats that are worth a darn. On the Quinjet, you got 11 attack, 3 damage, 6 base range. Whereas with the Blackbird, you have 0 range, 0 attack, 0 damage. Now I know some of you are like, but hey, doesn't that help with saving on cost and cutting down on cost? And the answer is yes. And that's why we're starting off at 120 versus 140. Now, the next thing that the Quinjet has definitively over the Blackbird is the clicks of damage reduction. The Quinjet has a total of, drumroll please, more than 3 clicks of damage reduction, which is what the Blackbird has. So that's the joke. Anyway, but being serious, the Quinjet has 10 clicks of damage reduction versus the Blackbird that has 3, and that's a really big deal if you think about it. Also, the Quinjet has 1 more click of life than the Blackbird. The Blackbird comes in at 17, the Quinjet comes in at 16, which can and can't matter at that stage. When you start talking about that much life, that's an issue. It could matter or not matter. All right. The other thing that we can start looking at is, where is the Blackbird sort of pulling ahead? Number one, I would say the Blackbird pulls ahead, in all honesty, is movement. Its movement beats the Quinjet until it hits Earthbound Neutralize, which at that stage, it's literally a dead duck. Alright, the amount of actual legitimate support powers that you can get that help you in combat actively is a lot better from the Blackbird than from the Quinjet. Okay, you get 3 clicks of Perplex at 120. You get 3 clicks of Enhancement, then 3 clicks of Outwit, then 4 clicks of Empower. That's a lot of value that's packed in right there. The defense value, I'm sorry, when we start looking at actually surviving, I have to again give it to the Quinjet. The Quinjet is just better. Alright, now, some folks will say, but hey, Dark Logos, we got stealth. We got stealth, guy. And I would come back as, yeah, we got stealth, man. But unfortunately, that doesn't mean jack. Let's sort of put that in perspective. Let's say we're out in the wilds of Wakanda, or Wakakada, whichever you want to call it. Okay, we're out in the wilds of Wakanda, and the Blackbird is there to deliver Storm to Black Panther. But in the meanwhile, Claw and his evil flunkies have decided to come and attack the wonderful nation of Wakanda. And on their side, they were able to contract the evil powers of Sutter. And not just weak Sutter, who just got beat up from Odin. No. 150 points Sutter, who's willing to give his full wrath to his fiery blades. And the X-Men are like, yes, we must go help Black Panther, because that's what good heroes do. And Sutter comes back like, ha 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 ha! My fire sword of doom shall smite thee all. And Cyclops, like a good ex-leader, says, everybody, hide behind the ship. And Sutter's like, I see you. Swipe. And he pretty much just wipes them out. Yeah, so in an age of colossals, stealth walls mean absolutely jack. Absolutely jack. And for us to understand that is very important. If you don't have anti-stealth on your team, you're playing this game wrong. So, unfortunately, as it is in this game, stealth is either absolutely broken or completely worthless. In Sealed, stealth is about a 50-50. A lot of times leaning more towards useful than not, depending on the set. But in Constructed, stealth, it's like paper armor. If it does anything, you just got lucky. So, overall, what can we notice? Number one, we're really not fighting with the Blackbird. Okay? And if we are fighting with the Blackbird, guess what we are doing? We are putting somebody with a stupid level range inside. And we are using a ton of Moya McTaggarts and beasts and whoever else, whosoever will, to blow up that range of that character inside and their attack and damage values and make them the best stationary cannon we possibly can. Also understanding that this jet does not have improved targeting, ignores hindering. Just saying. Just saying. Alright, so now let's start looking at these cool pilot abilities, and we're going to compare these pilot abilities. Alright, first off, the Blackbird. So if you put in the pilot ability Reconnaissance Transport, which is why it's stealth, prerequisite X-Men keyword, adjacent friendly characters modify range by +2. Now this is great. Now some of you might say, why is this great, Dark Logos? And I can say quite simple. All you're doing is putting in, you put your X-Trainee, which you're just going to be like, yo man, I pay 15 points for this. What do you want to do with it? Turn this dial wherever you want. Alright, cool. Bam. So you got your X-Trainee, and you just, or X-Student, and you just shove them into the Quinjet. Boom! Now every X-Men that has the X-Men keyword gets +2 range. That's great. That'll surprise people right there. Okay, now let's go into the pilot ability for the Quinjet. First one, Avengers. Prerequisite characters that's 50 points or more, and has the Avengers keyword. Quinjet can use sidestep and Avengers team ability. Now, this does help, in all honesty, the Quinjet to be more mobile and also be a better ID call-in figure. So, it's more about making the jet itself better. But, kicker, you do need somebody of 50 points or more to put inside. And in 300 points, that's a really good support piece. Or a mediocre third-tier attacker. But primarily, it's a really good support piece. So you put your really good support piece inside the Quinjet, hoping that it has good attack values. Because if you try to substitute those values, you're going to be hurting, more than likely. But you're more than likely just going to be swapping out for the powers. So there we go. Alright, so let's look at our second pilot abilities. Let's start with the Quinjet. Pilot ability, or shield. Prerequisite. Characters that's 50 points or more, that has the shield keyword. Quinjet has an additional target and can use the shield team ability. Alright, that's not bad. Shield TA is not bad. Having additional target just gives you 2 targets, so that's meh. Alright, depending on who's inside, that can be awesome or suck. Now, with old school energy explosion, it could have been better. But with new school energy explosion, it's just not worth it because it's energy explosion. Alright, now, let's go ahead and look at the second trait on the Blackbird. So fast, it doesn't show up on radar. Modify Blackbird's defense by +1 if it moved during your last turn. Well, take that back. That's not a pilot ability. So, let's look. Alright, so if I've moved, I get +1 defense. So when I deploy out, hey, guess what? I'm +1 defense. I'm a 19 up front. I'm either a 19, an 18, or 17, depending on your starting line, and then add in +2 if you start on the energy shield deflection clicks from range. Alright, cool. We got that settled. Now, is this good? And the answer is hot diggity dog no. Now, the main reason why this isn't good is because, unlike a pilot ability that would say, like, maybe like New Mutants or X Factor or like, you know, Off to Save the Day or Unity Squad or some other crap where we could add somebody else with another keyword inside of the Blackbird to trigger this +1 of just having like, yo man, I get +1. Or you could be more thematic of saying Headmaster. Anyone with the freaking Headmaster trait gives this jet +1 defense. Boom. Now, I know some of you are like, but that makes that Cyclops too OP. Well, yes, it does. Yes, it does. But I don't care. I love it. But yeah, I think that second trait is bad. Just overall. It's not going to be useful most of the time. Alright, so let's go on to the third trait. Relax. I've survived more jet crashes than any mutant or human alive. When the Blackbird is KO'd or /wrecked, and a character with the X-Men keyword is the pilot, do not roll the D6. After resolution, modify that character's combat values. I guess when you roll for see if you take damage. Modify that character's combat values by +1 until it's blurry, people, so bear with me. Modify that character's combat values by +1 until the end of your next turn. If that character is also named Cyclops, heal him 1 click and modify his combat values by an additional +1 protected pulse wave. Now, so what you've done is you just put Cyclops on beast mode, and he's mad, and he's got full optic rage, okay? And because you just KO'd an X-Man, you hit an X-Man, so he's going to tag that butt for free, and it's going to be some, you know, laser hair removal for sure. All right, so when we look at that, what is this saying? What does it say? Pretty much, this whole entire Blackbird is designed for Cyclops. I'm not going to front. It's just designed for Cyclops the pilot, which is fine, okay? But at the other end, 50-point Cyclops, that is the super rare, is just to let you know, if once you crash with him inside, he either is going to be a 12-4, or if you, or he's going to be a 13-5 with a 19 defense and running shot. Okay, so let's not fool ourselves. All right, that's a vengeance. That's a vengeance. And let's just say you use, like, first-class X-Men. First-class Cyclops, all right? The all-new, all-whatever X-Men. Whatever. He's still popping out with a 12 attack, 4 damage, and he has the ability to use his optic blast thing. And he can use the X-Men First Class trait on top of that. So yeah. So this is just says, yo, man, run a Cyclops. Don't play. Just run Cyclops. All right, and you're an 8 range with the common, and you're a 10 range with the super rare. Okay, and you still have your leadership in Perplex. All right, so I know some people are like, okay, Dark Logos, let's come back. Stop the happy train. Why am I focusing in specifically, and why am I caring about buying this Blackbird? From what you're telling me, it's okay. It's not that great with the stats. It's pretty much designed for Cyclops. I don't have the money for super rare Cyclops. I got so many of those common Cyclopses. I'm tired of it. I don't really like them. But okay, so why am I buying this thing? Well, let's go back to the resource part and go into the dial. And I really want to hit this key part. If we look at the state of the game right now, I would argue being able to call in, like, you have one ID card, you get lucky, you roll a 5 or a 6 when you call in that ID card in. And you're just like, oh, hey, I'm going to make a permanent 50-point Cyclops. I'm going to make a permanent 50-point Wolverine. I'm going to make a permanent a 50-point M. Oh, roll for reset. I rolled a 4. Oh, I'm going to make a permanent Leech. Roll for reset. I rolled a 6. I'm going to make a permanent Cyclops. Like, you have to understand that the silliness of the type of Aragon Ghost Army you can do with the X-Men ID cards is beyond stupid. Like, to infinity levels. Pixar joke. All right, so let's sort of break this down a little bit. Sprite's cheap. You could call her in. No one plays Artie. Everybody hates Artie. You don't play Artie unless you really, really need a mind control. And even then, you play Professor X. Okay? Nobody likes Rusty. That dude sucks. If you play Rusty, you're desperate. Okay? Same for Skids. Nobody likes that chick. All new Wolverine. And we got a Jonathan in there too? And I get a +1 when I re-roll for my student ID? Now, with all new Wolverine, bear in mind, she's probably... this is stupid. She's your quote-unquote endgame. Oh, I'm gonna build up for all new Wolverine. No, man. Yeah, like, that's stupid. Okay, I'm probably going to summon all new Wolverine, go in and do an attack, summon a Jonathan, and then let her be like the catalyst that starts this popping off. Because you like Brew, cheap. Gold Balls, cheap. Prodigy, cheap. Chamber, cheap. Husk, cheap. Jubilee, cheap. M can be 90 points, but other than that, she can be 50. Cheap. Skin, cheap. Sync, cheap. Angel, you can get him cheap. Beast, cheap. Cyclops, cheap. Iceman can be expensive. But he also can be low points too. And still call in the Ice Clone. Jean Grey, cheap to moderate. Emma Frost, moderate. Shadowcat, that depends. Magneto, moderate. Storm, cheap. Wolverine, cheap to expensive. In terms of points, people, I'm saying all this in terms of points. It is easy. It is grade A, easy peasy to get lucky, roll 50% of the time calling in a student ID. 50% of the time. And just be like, oh yeah, I got a +1. Boop, I rolled a 4. Okay, cool. Next turn, I can make somebody else permanent. Yeah. Alright, now, the Blackbird also comes with probably one of the most stupidest things ever. Pretty much the X-Men First Class student IDs. Now, some of you would probably say, but Dark Logos, don't we have an event coming up where we're going to get more ID cards in the summer of X-Men? And I'd say, yes, we are. And then you're going to tell me, but Dark Logos, why would they incorporate student IDs inside of the Blackbird of characters we already have Headmaster IDs for? Because it's called undercutting the market. Let's be honest. Being able to double up on Jean Grey, being able to double up on Cyclops, after all the silliness that I just said, and you don't want to double up on the Cyclops call in? Really? You don't? You sure? Are you sure? Because I can just burn one call in, the 5-point, call in 50-point Cyclops. Sorry. Burn the student one, roll, have a +1, possibly reset to get a 5, have 50 points, and then use the standard 5-point one to call in a permanent Cyclops the next turn. Like, yo, there's that. Double up on Iceman. You could get the 2 of the chases. You can run 2, the chase, and then another Iceman from that set. Beast, meh. If you need to outwit that bad, if you really need it that bad, I can't think of any reason to call in Beast, really. That's going to be useful. Okay. Jean Grey, multiple TKs, and, Angel, like, there's a case. There's a case for wanting that Angel ID now. Before I was like, I'm not feeling it. I'll get it just in case something weird happens. And lo and behold, that one thing that's weird happened. Okay. So, I know some of you are going to be like, well, but there's also Professor X ID. Like, yeah! There's Professor X ID, and there's still Colossus ID, and there's Banshee. We don't know if that's a student or a headmaster. Please let it be a headmaster. Just let it be a headmaster. And there's a few other characters that we're getting out of Origins. So when I look at the game, and someone tells me, man, Dark Logos, okay, I'm confused. You're telling me that this isn't that great. Then you sell me on these ID card call-ins. Then you sell me that there's student ID cards that come in with this. What is the gist? I feel like you're leading me on. I'm confused. Okay? And I get it. I get it. Let me hold your hand and stroke it a little bit. I get it, man. I get it. It's confusing. And it's not clear. But I gotta be honest with you, there's problems. I see problems. When Unimind can flurry for 6 to 7 damage, this thing is dead. This thing is dead. It's not immune from outwit. Okay? This thing is dead. This thing is dead. It doesn't, reduce penetrating damage. This thing is dead. This thing is dead. Okay. If you are able to keep it alive, and again, if Unimind didn't have flurry, I would be like, you know what? We get a medic, and we would know we're fighting a battle of attrition. And even if it had the Blackbird had X-Men team ability, I would have been like, there's potential here. But it doesn't. It has all these like mockeries that make the actual jet itself better. It functionally just says, the turn this dies, Cyclops becomes pimp. Run away to make sure you do not die to laser beam 10 range Cyclops. That's pretty much what the design says. So, as it stands now, I can see you either playing at high point or low point. I don't see the 100 point being really an option if you're looking at it from the resource perspective. I do believe, in my humble opinion right now, that just getting the IDs itself make them worth the purchase. Being able to double up on Jean Grey, double up on... we're going to be able to double up on Storm anyway because of this summer. But just being able to come back and double up on some of the headmasters, and you just want to facepalm. You want to facepalm, and you're going to be like, WizKids, you have proven to me that you have a problem. And that problem is you can't be trusted to make balanced con exclusives. You cannot be trusted. Yes, I should want to have the figures. But you can't come back at me and be like, hey. We knew the Quinjet was a problem. We fixed it. We took out all the stuff that made the Quinjet a problem, but still kept the core of the resource. We made it work. Okay, it's not impossible to kill. It doesn't have as much damage reduction. It's more stealthy, rangy type of figure. Okay, it's strange. Stealth range, strange. It's a strange figure. Okay, that's what WizKids is going to tell you. And then, and underneath that, it's like they're going to say, like, hey guys, I heard you have a crack problem, a plastic card crack problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to encourage that plastic card crack problem. Here you go. And then they slide the ID cards underneath. And then you're just like, oh man. Oh, where's my money? Where's my money, man? I gotta have more of these. So yeah, that's how I'm viewing it. I'm hoping that this does not turn into a mistake that we come to regret. And in particular, going back to sort of this Unimind theme meta. If I, as a Unimind player, can call in Cyclops for 2 points cheaper, call in Jean Grey for 2 points cheaper, call in Iceman for 2 points cheaper, and again, low point Iceman, not full point Iceman, I have just banked in 6 points. Those 6 points can go towards another ID card. I've functionally earned another ID card. And it doesn't seem like, oh yeah, you just earned another ID card. That's what happened. But when you start playing with it in high-level builds, that's what you did. That's what you did. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens, but I also know, like, this is not clean. I think there's going to be a lot of work that's going to come out before we see this be a threat. I think also, and I'm going to say this honestly, when the next round of retirement happens, this will be unequivocally almost unchallengeable. Almost. Now the problem is, Unimind is in the same block as these ID cards, quote unquote, until 3 years out this retires, unless they put this on a 2-year schedule. And if they put it on a 2-year schedule, then okay, you shortcut us again. So you might as well just make con exclusives on a 2-year schedule. Definitely if you're using mechanics like Colossal Retaliation or mechanics like ID cards. Just calling it as I see it. Alright, well, that's it for today's show. I'd like to thank you all for listening. I appreciate it. I want you all to follow me on Twitter, @StartOverPod. It came from outer space and told me, man, out there in the great beyond, you don't want to go light speed. Never go full light speed. Yeah, it's functionally like horrible for you. Like space particles would rip through your being. If your ship went light speed, everybody would die. And when you would come out light speed, the amount of radiation that you would have would be ridiculous. Yeah, I'm on Team Tesseract now. Full space. That's how we get around. No light speed. Or Team Goku if you want to go instant transmission. So I'm off the Star Trek and Star Wars trip. Pro Team Goku. Pro Team Tesseract. There we go. All right. You can email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. That's startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. If you wish to opine, keep it piffy, keep it interesting, keep it awesome, baby. I had a listener ask me, like, yo, man, is it a good idea to start selling stuff? And, he was telling me about his venue and whatnot. And I would tell you, sir, don't open a place to go and sell heroclix. I don't think that's a good idea. Please don't. Please don't do that. I think there's a lot more risk in selling heroclix right now. Definitely when I see an Infinity go for under $20, and yep, I just lost my chance to get the Infinity doing the show. I forgot, like, yeah, I've been trying to get this Infinity and doing the show. It's like, and yeah, that sucker sold for $18 and I missed it. Yeah, so pretty much with stuff going as, I hate to say it, as cheap as it is, just sort of, unless you can get everything on the super deep cheap, I do not see being, I gotta be honest, I don't see people making a lot of money off of selling heroclix. You're either selling volume or you're playing, Russian roulette, hoping that you hit all the money figures in the set. And I don't see that happening for most people. So yeah, it's frustrating. It's annoying. But don't go into it like as a business. If you're going to sell off your extras, I would just tell you, go sell off your extras. That is far better than trying to sell like as a business. That's what I would tell anybody right now. Now, if you have a store, then that's a different story. I would encourage everybody that has a store to go out there and support the game, buy heroclix, host events and stuff like that. But if you're starting off from a business perspective, please don't. All right, you can donate to the show, startingoverpodcast.blogspot.com. Just click on there, that donation link on that blog, that dead tomb of once enthusiasm of writing about the game. Yeah. And if you want a Starting Over Podcast t-shirt, feel free to click on the link below. It helps support the show directly. All right. I'd like to thank you all for listening. Thank you all thank you for all the new subscribers. All you new subscribers, round of applause to you all, and also for the cool feedback on the last video. So, been sort of picking up traction here lately since I've been on my my world tour. So, yay. All right, thank you for listening, and thank you for everybody, hitting the brother up. And remember,